A press conference is not a plan.
So I hope Republicans will wake up.
The president wants us to help pay for his spending binge.
Many Republicans in the House refuse to consider this kind of balanced approach.
I think the president should apologize.
The debt ceiling is being held hostage.
What if they don't work it out and Congress runs out of money to spend? They've promised to pay your Social Security and Medicare and pay the military and help the poor. They'll just stop? Well, no, because the federal government's unique. It can just print more money. But when they do, each bill then decreases in value. Eventually, this becomes nearly worthless. It's equivalent to government going bankrupt, being unable to pay your Social Security check. And what would that look like? Well, it has already happened in Pritchard, Alabama.
I want to know why we're not the budget. Why are we not the budget?
This woman's angry because her husband worked for the city of Pritchard, Alabama for 32 years. He held up his end of the bargain, but the city didn't. It didn't send him a pension check for more than a year. The city council says, we don't have the money. In 2003, an accountant warned the town, you will run out of money by 2009. The politicians then did nothing, as they admit today.
Nothing never changed. Nothing never was accomplished.
Right on schedule in 2009, the town went broke. So politicians declared bankruptcy and just stopped sending pension checks to retired city employees. More than 100 of them.
They didn't do anything that they were supposed to do. They didn't pay us like they're supposed to.
Alfred Arnold recently retired from the Pritchard Fire Department after working 35 years for the city. He'd hoped to relax and travel, but when the pension check stopped coming, he had to get another job. Now, at age 66, he's a security guard at the local mall. And Alfred Arnold joins us now, along with Steve Malanga, who studies governments and their budgets. You had to get a job as a security guard.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you thought you were going to get your pension for working for years from the city, and it just wasn't there.
It was not there. I had to go to work 40 hours a week, just like starting all over again, you know.
And I know another person, Gwen Williams, 77 years old, felt lucky to get a job as a school teacher.
Yes.
Now, it's not like the town has no money. They're paying the mayor almost $100,000.
Exactly.
They have a housing authority with 40 government workers. They knew this was going to happen. Had you known this was going to happen, you would have saved money. You would have been prepared for this, made your own plans.
Or left the city one.
Steve Malanga, you study cities. Is this going to happen to more places?
Well, it's happened to a few places, and a lot of places are approaching this, whether they get bailed out by their states or not, because, you know, it is an open question. But you have Vallejo, California, filed for bankruptcy, Central Falls, Rhode Island, pension problems, asking for a 50% cut in pensions for retirees. So we are seeing this, absolutely.
And cities and states, unlike the federal government, can't print money. So
that's for sure. And they can't run deficits, technically.
And in a way, it's a good discipline, except it's people like you who suffer.
Here's the problem, is that these pension funds and the way they're structured is just another form of borrowing. It's just like debt. So even though technically cities and states can't run deficits, they are running deficits. They choose to run them in their pension funds. Politicians make promises. They don't fund them. It would be like me saying, hey, I'm going to fund my IRA by borrowing money from my credit card and putting it in my IRA. Now I funded my IRA, but I owe this money on my credit card. That's not really funding my IRA. So it's another form of debt. It's hidden debt. And that's what they're relying on.
But in Pritchard, in his town, you have the city council. They have an accounting firm that says, you are going to go broke in X years. And they just do nothing? I mean, they're supposed to be the responsible party.
What happens is that when you get to the point where someone says you're going to go broke in 5 years in a pension fund, the cost of getting out of it is so high that people just ignore it. Look, you have a state like New Jersey that hasn't made a pension. 10 years, they barely made a payment into the pension system. The unfunded liabilities got bigger and bigger and bigger. Illinois, they don't make payments into the pension system. They borrow the money. They did that joke that I just made. That's what they do. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, the problem. So
they know it's going to blow up and they figure they'll be out of office, or they just stick their heads in the sand?
With these pension funds, it is a long-term problem. The accounting is very, very complex, way too complex. It's a little bit like Wall Street accounting. And so what happens is they basically ride it out. All of these people who made, all these states like New Jersey and New York and Connecticut, who made pension promises in the 1990s, big promises that they can't pay for, most of those politicians are gone now. And the current politicians are stuck with the problems. So it's a dysfunctional system because you make promises now that have to be paid for 10, 20 years in advance.
So what's going to happen? I mean, some cases they're saying, okay, new employees, we're going to pay you less. But in order to stiff the older employees, as happened to you,
right,
they have to go bankrupt. They have to declare bankruptcy, get reorganized by some judge who says, okay, you can. Doesn't seem fair. Your city has a golf course they're losing money on. They didn't get rid of that.
Why don't they sell that? Yeah.
They should sell that.
Yeah, exactly.
And now finally they're paying you a third of what they promised.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And
You happy with that?
No, I'm not. Not at all.
And part of the problem, John, basically, is that essentially what you have to do is you have to do this in a way that fixes the system now by reduces the cost now for those people who are currently working so that you can continue to pay your retirees. Otherwise, you set up the situation where you're going to say, well, we're going to save the system for the people who are working now, but at the expense of the retirees.
So is that happening? Are they doing it?
Well, first of all, people are doing different things around the country. Some people are saying, look, employees have to pay more. Other people are saying, other states are saying, let's raise taxes so we can put more money in our system. And cities are taking different approaches. There's not just one approach. City of Atlanta, just probably the most radical thing. They just instituted a kind of 401k, defined contribution plan, which basically ends the long-term liability for the city. It's you put the money in right now for the employees. Make sure everybody knows what's going in. Make it transparent. So cities are doing different things. Some responsible.
Good news.
Some responsible. Not all of them responsible. Some of them, again, it's just illusory fixes in some cases. It's really a case-by-case basis. You can't make a generalization.
And this is just a little microcosm of what's going on the federal level with all the noise over the debt ceiling. But in every town, something similar. And you look at New York City, my town. You say that New York City, the pension costs 10 years ago were $1.5 billion. It's $8.5 billion this year.
Absolutely. In just 10 years, it went from being just 6% of the city's budget to 16% of the city's budget. That's happening around the country. Basically, if you think about that, something else has to be cut in order just to account for that. And in New York City is a good case of a really dysfunctional situation because it's the state legislature that dictates what the city must pay, but the city has to pay it. And that is, and you find this in states around the country, that is a really bad system because basically it's mandates coming down that the people at the state level don't have to pay.
Well, it's awful for people like you, Alfred, and yet you seem pretty good-natured about it. Aren't you ticked off?
Oh,
You
yeah.
cheated.
Certainly I'm ticked off about it. As a matter of fact, what this gentleman was just saying is basically true in the city of Pritchett. What they're doing now, understand, is starting a new program after they get rid of our pension with like a 401k, what's called a 459. The employees going to invest money into it, but the city is not.
Well, at least it'll pay off if it's the employees' old money. Thank you, Alfred Arnold and Steve Malanga. Coming up, my solution to our horrible deficit. Are you ready for some cutting? I'm gonna cut.